In a world of ordinary fantasy football podcasts, ordinary guys rise up to bring you extraordinary analysis and entertainment. This is the Falafel House Fantasy Football Podcast with your hosts Kevin Cotillo, Sal Lito, and Stephen Marcus.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Today is November 8th. It is Super Tuesday, Steve. Super Tuesday. Today is super.
I'm not feeling super.
You don't feel super?
I'm not. No.
Well, you should feel super because this is the Falafel House Fantasy Football Podcast, and that makes everyone happy.
That's true. That does cheer me up a little bit. I got a smile on my face now. Thanks, Kev.
There you go. You're welcome. So today is Super Tuesday. Hopefully everyone went out to vote or forgot to register. One of the two.
Yeah, I can't stand those guys.
Yeah, seriously. Those guys are the worst. So we're not going to, we don't do politics on this show. I don't think we've ever talked politics on this show. So I don't think now is a good time to start.
You don't think now would be a good time? I think this would be the perfect time to get into it.
It is a good time considering Sal's not with us.
That is true. Yet another episode without Sal Lito, our astound colleague from New York, Long Island, gone,
Lato.
Still enjoying his vacation.
I believe it's Lato.
Lato?
Lato, yes.
Lato.
Sal Lato.
Well, you say Lito, I say Lato. He's not here.
Either way, he is not here. So it's just the two of us tonight. I am Kevin Cotillo. He is Stephen Marcus. You can follow the show.
If he were here, he would have just busted out just the two of us right there.
Yeah,
I know he would have.
He certainly would have. It's been far less musical without him. There's no question about that.
Yep, it really has been. All right, I'm sorry. I apologize.
That's okay. Do you need music in your life? I could sing.
Music does. It does put a smile on my face as well. But I don't know. I don't know how I'd feel with having someone else sing to me.
Right. I don't want to step in anyone's shoes. I certainly don't want to make you feel uncomfortable. So we'll see what happens as we go along here. But for now, I just want to let everyone know that you can follow the show on Twitter as @FalafelHouse. You can find me on Twitter as @WallyCentral and Steve on Twitter as @SidSkeet. You can also get Sal Lato on Twitter as @LitoSal. And you can follow us all on the Fantasy Life app. Steve, you think there's anyone that listens to this show that hasn't checked out the Fantasy Life app yet?
I'm sure there's a few of you out there, and I think it's time for you all to look in the mirror and ask yourself what's going on.
Yeah, I would definitely ask why you haven't, if you haven't. It's a great app. Obviously, you can go on there. You can check out all kinds of things. There's a main page where people just post questions, they post suggestions, there's sponsored shouts which have answers to waiver wire questions. You can post memes. There's all kinds of stuff on there. And then, of course, if you're looking for some good solid fantasy advice, you can step into one of the chats. Specifically, I would recommend the Falafel House chat. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I actually would recommend that one as well. I'm, a little particular to that one, but tons of great advice. People in there 24/7. Giving you their opinions and, not shoving their opinions down your throat necessarily, but, opens a nice dialogue and you can talk to people and hash things out and see why people think in the way they do. So it's just a great place to talk fantasy all the time.
Yeah, I find a lot of people will go in there and post questions just for validation. Because
that does happen sometimes.
We all second guess our lineup choices quite a bit. And I think it's always nice to hear that people are recommending that you keep the lineup you're going with. Sometimes you get a little wonky on those thought processes, and it's good to run them by some people. So great place to do that. And just to be clear here, we are not sponsored by them in any way. We actually do just like the app.
Yes.
However, if Charlie and Mark are listening,
Yeah, I mean, we're not opposed to it. That's for sure.
Right.
But obviously it is in part of our name. That's where we were born. That's where we started, where we met, everything. So we owe a lot to them, and we just want to pay it back. We want to get as many people on there as possible.
Absolutely. So definitely go check that out. You can get it anywhere you get your apps. Steve, we got a little bit to get to. Usually I say we have a lot to get to, but tonight we have a little bit to get to.
It's a light show.
It's a light show. Not because, there's not a lot going on in the NFL. There is. We'll go through some news and notes. And not because you shouldn't be really focusing on your roster construction or, your overall playoff push, because you absolutely should. So we'll go through some waiver wire ads and kind of talk through some of that. But really, it's the middle of the week, and, we like to fill this with some games and some fun items, and I think it's clear that neither of us are fun.
Speak for yourself. First of all, I am very right? Fun.
Oh, I just assumed since Sal's not here, we can't be fun.
Oh well, we are probably less fun, I'm sure. Of that, I am sure. So yeah, a lighter show, not as many injuries. So I mean, and as far as news goes and waivers go, you're not scrambling as much trying to replace people that might have got injured over the weekend. And a lot of bye week teams are coming back, so you're getting a lot of players back from these 2 terrible bye weeks. And so as far as waivers go, as far as news go, it's a lighter week all around. So it leads to a lighter show.
Absolutely. All right, so let's get to it. We will start with some news. I will go through a bunch of these. Stop me when you've heard this one, or actually just don't stop me unless you have something interesting to say.
Okay.
First one here: Doug Martin and Jaquiz Rogers still not practicing. I don't see how they come back this week if they're not practicing by definitely by tomorrow. Jaquiz Rogers still in a walking boot. We have no idea what Doug Martin's doing, if he's doing anything. My question to you, Steve, and this kind of came up, I think, in one of our chats at some point recently, is Doug Martin coming back? Do you think he'll come back? It sounded like they were hopeful, and then now he's not practicing still.
Yeah, it's definitely getting a little scary. It's something that happened back at week 2. He said that he was going to be fine, that it was just a hammy tweak, and then all of a sudden he was out for 3 weeks, out through the bye week. Then he comes back from the bye week, tweaks it again over the weekend, and now he's been out for the last 3 or 4 games. And I don't know. It's hard to tell at this point, and it's something that you're obviously having to deal with, that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are having to deal with, trying to fill in that position, because they had Charles Sims go down on the IR. They had Jaquiz Rogers, who you just mentioned, is still not practicing. And then I know I just mentioned that there weren't many injuries last week, but Antoine Smith, who was a hot waiver wire pickup in Phil last week, he went on the IR, so he's no longer available. So it's becoming a big deal for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And at this point, I don't think you can trust on him coming back. I think you hope that you were able to pick somebody up when you were dealing with this issue earlier in the season, like a Jordan Howard, and that you're able to fill in easily the spot that he's vacated. But I wouldn't be holding my breath, and I think that if he does come back, you're thankful for that. But I definitely wouldn't be banking on it at this point.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. And I will say this, though. If you are a Doug Martin owner and you are in a keeper league, or obviously in a dynasty, you're hanging on to him. But if you're in a keeper league, you may want to consider keeping him. I know he's going to be hurt and whatnot, but he has this history of one good, one bad, one good, one bad. So next year should be pretty solid for him.
Yeah, the value, because of this year, his value will probably drop again. You might end up finding him in the late 3rd or the beginning of the 4th round, as opposed to with the 2nd round where he was mostly going this season. So I think he'll be somebody that you'd be looking to steal a great value pick next year.
Absolutely. All right, we continue on. Ryan Fitzpatrick has a sprained MCL. Obviously, he left the game for a little bit on Sunday, but he did come back. Bryce Petty's ready to go in the event that he can't go, but it looks like he's going to play, so keep an eye on that. Not that, I don't recommend using either Ryan Fitzpatrick or Bryce Petty. So
I would start Brandon Marshall this week, regardless of who starts, because he has not had a great game in a while, and I've noticed he is going to be going against me in quite a few places this week, which only in one, most notably in Falafel, which means he is bound to have his best game of the season against the LA Rams. So I would start your Brandon Marshalls this week, regardless of who's going to be starting at quarterback for the Jets.
Yeah, it is starting to turn into a trend for you, eh?
Yeah, this past week, I don't want to talk about it too much, but since it got brought up, I lost again, 1-8 in Falafel.
8 in a row.
8 in a row. This one's particularly brutal. I remember last year, Eagles Nation, defeated me with Marcus Mariota's best game of the year when he started the season throwing those 4 touchdowns. And 1 year later, because of all the things that I've said about Marcus Mariota on this podcast, even though he's not on Eagles Nation's team, he did throw 2 pick sixes to the defense that was on Eagles Nation's team, and I lost by less than that margin. So I'm blaming Marcus Mariota for my latest falafel loss, and now I'm upset again.
So to be clear, if Brandon Marshall does actually go off this week, I think that you pretty much have to throw in the towel, because I'm looking at his numbers, and week 5 he had a good game against Pittsburgh, 21.4 points, 8 catches, 114 yards, and a touchdown. Since then, for fantasy points, he has had 8.5, 5.4, 8.8, and 7.5. And these aren't like tough games either. I mean, Arizona's got a good secondary, but he's played Baltimore, Cleveland, Miami.
Yep.
I really think that you should quit for the season.
I'll tell you what. When he goes off on Sunday, it may just happen.
Yeah.
It has been brutal. Jimmy Graham, congratulations on your great game last night. I'm very happy that was against me. So, yeah, getting a little rough. We should move on.
All right, so let's move on. Doug Peterson finally admits that Darren Sproles is the lead back in Philadelphia. Not that anyone else is surprised. For some reason, it took him a while to get there, but good for him for admitting it. Ryan Matthews, we've talked about his efficiency, but while he is efficient, I don't think you can count on that for long. So I don't know that he's playable anymore.
No, I mean, the one time that you start him and he does not get into the end zone is going to be the last time that you start him, because he's not getting the carries, not getting the opportunities. And thank you for Doug Peterson finally coming out and, apologizing for thinking we are all idiots, basically.
Yeah, I just don't understand coaches sometimes. I mean, I get the coach speak and all that, but come on.
Yeah.
You'll see when we get a little later in the show, we have a little bit of an award section for tonight. And Sal actually nominated Ryan Matthews for, we pretty much unanimously agreed that he would be most likely to be named the starter and then not get a touch after the first quarter. So good job by Sal mailing that one in for us. We will give that award away later and confirm that it will be Ryan Matthews. So Matt Jones back to practice, but Gruden's telling everyone that he needs to earn his time back. Rob Kelly obviously is expected to get the first and second touches there. Are you touching this backfield right now, Steve, or are you, like me, very hesitant?
I'm pretty hesitant coming out of this bye week. For this first week, I would probably still lean towards Rob Kelly if I was forced to start one of these guys. But I would prefer to have them both on the bench, be able to see it play out for a week before I put any faith into it. I can see this definitely going to a 2-headed monster. And then don't forget that Chris Thompson's still there. So it was much easier when Matt Jones was not in the picture. Him coming back definitely muddies the waters a bit. But Rob Kelly looked good in that game against Cincinnati. So I like that Jay Gruden's given him the opportunity to keep those first and second down opportunities and see what he can do for them going forward.
Yeah, and to be clear, Matt Jones will fumble upon his first carry and be sent back to the bench anyway. So I don't think there's too much to worry about there.
That's true. Very true.
All right. Will Fuller is still not practicing. He's a guy that was obviously, had a great start to the season, kind of tailed off and then had some injuries. So, I don't know. You got to keep an eye on him. This is more just to make sure you keep an eye on him because he's still not practicing kind of thing. Tevin Coleman is practicing, but he's practicing on side fields, which is normally not a good sign for a guy who's expected to start this week. Definitely keep an eye on that one as well because it doesn't look good from that aspect. Let's see, a couple other guys here. Alex Smith is expected to return this week, yet there is no timetable for Jeremy Maclin. Steve, do you care about either of those two?
Not particularly, especially after these bye weeks. Not so many teams are going to be out. Alex Smith falls back to, a mid-range QB2 for me. And Jeremy Maclin, even though he scored a couple weeks ago, I don't think that he's a weekly start for me. So I'm not particularly concerned about Jeremy Maclin, and even less concerned about Alex Smith, I guess.
So Spencer Ware, on the other hand, who I'm sure you are concerned about, is still in the concussion protocol, but Andy Reid says there's a good chance he'll play. I don't know what he's basing that on, if he's still in the concussion protocol and hasn't passed out yet. And we're over a week now, or into the next week, which is usually not a good sign for them to be, not have been cleared yet. So definitely keep your eyes open on that one.
Yep, I mean, Sharkandrick West filled in last week and definitely did not have the performance that everybody was expecting. So everyone will be hoping that Spencer Ware comes back and is able to, put out the type of performances he was doing before he went down.
So back to a normal and manageable number of bye weeks this week. Is Sharkandrick West going to be high on your list, and are you looking at Niall Davis at all?
No,
the recently added back Niall Davis.
No, recently reacquired by the team that originally dropped him, Niall Davis. No, I'm not looking at him at all. If Sharkandrick West or if Spencer Ware were to be out again, I would not have any issue rolling Sharkandrick West out. I probably wouldn't have him as high. He might not be a running back 1 for me, probably be around running back 2 because of how often Kansas City runs the ball. But I definitely will be starting whichever Kansas City running back is going to be starting this week.
Yeah, I mean, against Carolina, not a great matchup overall, but they're definitely going to get the touches because as we know, Niall Davis just is not very good. So interesting for them, though. The interesting thing there is they traded him, so they didn't drop him. Right, they traded him to Green Bay for a 4th round, I think, something like that, 4th or 5th. Is that what it was?
Yeah, they definitely got something for him. They didn't just cut him outright.
Yeah, so good for them. I mean, that's great.
Actually, that's not bad.
Yeah. All right.
Run around.
Alan Hearns is in the concussion protocol as well. So if you're an Alan Hearns owner, keep your eyes open. For me, it's really more keep your eyes on Marquise Lee because he is definitely valuable if Hearns is out. He's a guy that I'll talk about a little more in the waiver wire section. Eddie Royal is back at practice. Good to see there. I don't know how much usage he's going to get now, given that we have Jay Cutler, who can't make more than one read, and Alshon Jeffrey is the first one. Cameron Meredith is the second one. So
love it.
Not sure what's going to happen with Royal there, but
I'll tell you, Cameron Meredith's going to get hurt. Eddie Royal's going to step in and play one good game and score a touchdown.
He'll have 100 yards and a touchdown, yep.
And also get hurt and be on the injury report the next week and not play for 2 weeks.
Right.
So that is what's going to happen there.
That probably is what is going to happen. And if it does, I will be very impressed there, Steve. Actually, I won't be impressed because that's exactly what should happen. So, Capri Bibbs, he could see more snaps than Booker, according to Gary Kubiak. Steve, this is your team. What are they doing?
I think that this is one of those things where you can take it as coach speak. I think this is something they're saying to motivate Devontae Parker after a rough showing from him. I do agree that Capri Bibbs has looked good and that he probably will get some more touches, but I'd be very surprised if coming into this week that he out-touches Devontae Booker. I think that was just a motivation thing, get the rookie going again after he had this rough performance against Oakland. So a couple weeks ago, I was saying that I didn't think Capri Bibbs was worth an add. I definitely don't think that anymore. I think if you own Devontae Booker in the least, you need to be adding Bibbs everywhere. So definitely somebody that you want to be looking at. I don't think that he'll be out-touching Booker this week, though.
All right. And finally, for me, Victor Cruz is day-to-day. Had a knee injury. Ankle, I'm sorry. Ankle injury, and but it doesn't look like it's too serious, so keep an eye on that. We talked about
it doesn't look like it's too serious, but it came out today that he might only miss a week. Right. So for them to say that there's no structural damage, doesn't look too serious, but already saying that he might only miss a week is something that's kind of a red flag for me, just because if it wasn't that serious, you'd probably not be missing any time. So
very true. And
definitely something to keep track of.
Yeah, it hasn't exactly been a picture of health, that Victor Cruz. So
no, not at all. It's just like Carlos Hyde when he talked about his shoulder. Don't trust the players when they say that that's not a big deal. They're always going to be optimistic and they don't exactly know everything that's going on. So,
well, as you mentioned, Doug Martin said his hammy wasn't a big deal. So,
yep,
and that was week 10 or week 2. So,
exactly.
as we talked about, Sterling Shepard definitely gets an uptick in value if Cruz does miss any time. So, for a guy that may or may not have been dropped, obviously this week with a decent week, so he's going to be snagged back up. So make sure you grab him if you need a wide receiver, particularly if Cruz can't go this weekend. Any other news that you can think of that we didn't get to so far?
No, I think you touched on all the notable highlights thus far this week.
Good, nice job, me. I think if Sal was here, he would tell me that I did great work.
I don't. I think that if he were here, he'd have something else to say.
I'm sure that you are right. All right, so let's. Obviously, we're recording this on Tuesday nights. Most waiver claims go through in the middle of the morning on Wednesday. So or early morning, I should say Wednesday. So for a lot of you, these will be irrelevant because you'll be hearing this Wednesday after they've cleared. But we like to think that we help some people out by giving a few waiver wire additions. So let's. You want to start with you, Steve? Are you ready, or you want me to run through a few of mine?
No, you go ahead. You give me a few of yours.
All right. So I'll give you the whole list of guys that I'm looking at, and then I'll kind of touch on a few of them here. Guys I'm looking to add this week if I need a little help. Peyton Barber. He's I'll give you the percentages in ESPN leagues that they are owned. Peyton Barber is owned in 12.1% of leagues. Capri Bibbs is owned in 4.4% of leagues. We talked about both of these guys, obviously, with Doug Martin and Jaquiz Rogers out in Tampa Bay. Peyton Barber is going to be the guy. Anton Smith is not there anymore either. So they re-signed Mike Davis, but that's I don't expect much out of him. I think Peyton Barber's going to get a shot. He's a rookie. He's actually looked decent in the couple of games that he's gotten a decent workload. So if he can get something in the 15 to 20 carries here, I think he's got a good shot to have a decent game. So he's definitely a big one for me. And Capri Bibbs, as you just mentioned, I don't think that I think Kubiak's blowing a bit of smoke, saying he's going to get out-touch Booker, but at the same time, can you take that? Can you afford to take that chance? With most rosters hurting for running backs, I don't think you can. All right, Marquise Lee, a guy I mentioned briefly in regards to Alan Hearn being in the concussion protocol. Marquise Lee has actually had a little bit of an up and down season, but he's been pretty good overall. I mean, when you look at the production, particularly Oakland and Kansas City games, he had 14.2 fantasy points against Oakland with 7 catches for 107 yards. And then against Kansas City, 4 catches for 84 yards. So the talent is there. He was fairly consistent in the lower end, most of the season before that. But if Hearns is out, I think his only hindrance at that point will be Blake Bortles. And from what I understand, this guy can jump a mile. So I think he might be able to catch those Bortles passes.
Yeah, as you nailed it with Alan Hearns. If Alan Hearns is there, this guy becomes the second wide receiver in that offense, which, although is hindered by Blake Bortles with the matchup against Houston, which is not a great matchup. Houston's third against wide receivers. But you'd think that he would probably get quite a few targets. So I totally agree. I think that he's somebody that you could probably have some confidence in and has the ability to blow the top off of defense and score a big one for you. He does not have a touchdown yet this season, something that you would probably expect to change at some point. So might be a good play in a GPP DK lineup as well.
Absolutely. And just to, it's interesting to me, you say that, we both said that Blake Bortles is a hindrance to his wide receivers. He's also actually helpful to them because they get down so much in the beginning of the game that junk time is, in the fourth quarter. It's like fantasy gold again.
It's brutal. I hate it.
He's the worst.
I hate it.
He is the worst. All right, another guy, Ronnie Hillman, owned in 3.4% of leagues. I have no idea what's going to happen with Minnesota, and it's probably a timeshare as well. But Ronnie Hillman did look pretty good last week against the Lions. So he's a guy that I think, if you're looking to, if you have some guys to drop, if you have some space in your roster, I don't know that I'd give up a high priority waiver claim for him, but at the very least, I think he's worth a speculative add at this point just to see what's going on. He's better than some of the other guys you might find out there.
Yeah, I'd definitely much rather be rolling the dice with a Peyton Barber. I'm not a fan of that three-headed monster in Minnesota. I don't think that Bradford does enough for the defenses to have to worry about him. And so whichever guy ends up running the ball, I think they're going to have a hard time. So if I had to choose between the two, I would definitely be leaning Peyton Barber's way in that one.
Oh, agreed completely. No question about that. I just, got to throw him out there. Dion Lewis,
sure.
Dion Lewis is a guy that we've talked about a little bit. I expect, reports to come out this week. Obviously, the Patriots had the Monday game, and Belichick and Brady were too busy supporting Trump today to release anything. So, I do think Dion Lewis still owned in only 30% of leagues. If he's not owned in your league, go out and grab him. He is definitely a guy that I would add. Obviously you may or may not be able to start him this week, and even next week it could, you might want to see what happens. But he is a guy, particularly if you're in a playoff push, if you are in a, comfortably in the playoffs or think you will be, he could be fantasy gold by week 13.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've already seen James White, his production the last 2 weeks leading into the bye started to dip since the first couple of games when Brady was back. So kind of opened the door for Dion Lewis to take over that role a little bit easier. And if you'll remember, before he got hurt, he was doing both things on the field. He was running the ball a lot and catching it out of the backfield. So everyone assumed what would happen with LeGarrette Blount when Tom Brady came back with James White taking over. Dion Lewis does have the talent to actually do that type of thing. So just something to keep in mind going forward. I totally agree. You got to get him on your team.
Yeah, the fact that he's only owned in 30% to me is shocking. I mean, I know he's been out all season, but you would have thought that people over the last couple of weeks would really start to pick him up if he hadn't been owned. But we talked about Robert Kelly and Matt Jones a little bit. Robert Kelly still only owned in 26.2% of leagues. I think people just still don't know who he is really, and you need to. As we mentioned, it sounds like he's going to get the early down work, and in my mind, that could be valuable, particularly with Washington. To me that means he's probably also the goal line back. So I think he's a guy that you definitely need to add.
Yep, absolutely agree. I like it. Have liked him for a while, and I'm glad that he's getting some play. Definitely agree.
And a couple other guys that Paul Perkins is owned in only 4.2% of leagues right now. I think that he is a guy that looks like he's, we mentioned it in the earlier show, the show earlier this week, that he got the same amount of touches as Rashad Jennings did this week, almost exactly the same amount of touches this week. So, and I think that, look, the Giants' running game has been horrendous this year. So I think that you need to start looking to, eventually they're going to have to go with one way or the other and see if one of these guys steps up. And if that's the case, why not the rookie?
Yep, absolutely. I mean, for the same arguments that you made as to why you'd keep starting Cody Kessler over Josh McCown, I think this is a reason why you'd start Paul Perkins over Rashad Jennings going forward. He's just looked better when he's on the field. He's more explosive. It's just a matter of him being able to pick up blitzes and pass protect and all that kind of stuff. So I think as soon as you can feel confident in him doing that is when you got to make the switch. I like that ad a lot.
And similarly, guys like Kenneth Dixon, CJ Prosise, I don't have them on my list. I'm not sure their percentages. I'd have to look it up, but those are other guys in the same boat, the rookies that may start to get more active in their offenses. Who do you got, Steve? Anyone else that I left off?
No, you pretty much covered quite a few guys there. I'll just add somebody we're going to talk about in the awards section just real quick is Rashard Matthews. He's quietly snuck his way up to wide receiver 31 in half-point PPR scoring. He's only 11.3% owned. And just one of the reasons I mentioned him, teams on bye this week, you've got Buffalo, Detroit, Indianapolis, and Oakland. Not a lot of teams, but you think about the wide receivers on those teams. You have Golden Tate, Marvin Jones, T.Y. Hilton, Dante Moncrief, Amari Cooper, Michael Crabtree. Those guys are gone. So if you need a wide receiver Rashard Matthews is somebody who's been hot the last 5 weeks and who could definitely fill in for you. And he's got a pretty decent matchup against the Green Bay Packers this week. So that was someone I'd be looking at.
Good call there. We will not tell you what award he has won because we will get to it shortly. That's it for our waiver wire section. So thanks, Steve, for going through those with me there.
Hey, no problem, bud.
Hopefully we can help you out, as we mentioned before, to win your league, because that's what we're trying to do here, right?
That's right.
For everyone
that's
else, except
what
Steve.
We aim to do, except for me. Hey,
right.
If I can help but one other child win a league at my own expense, then I will consider this a successful season.
Listen, I am looking at the matchups for Falafel, and I'm going to tell you right now, you and I have a showdown in week 12, it looks like, and I will bet that you beat me there.
I appreciate that, and I hope I do.
I'm certain you will. I'm certain you will. I look at your team, man, and it's not that bad.
It's painful. It is. I think the same thing. Each week I go into it with so much promise, and it just let me down every week. And so even this week, I put up some decent points. Had DeJuan Harris in there, solid pickup. Felt good about that. And then Marvin Jones happened, and that was about it.
Yeah, you got Marvin Jones and Jimmy Graham.
That's right.
So
yes, I did.
All right, we move along to the awards section of the evening. Basically, what we're doing here, we figure it's a little over halfway through the actual NFL season, which is a little more than halfway through the, the fantasy football season. But awards need to be given. We need to go through and determine who is winning this season for you, who's losing this season for you. But instead of doing the typical awards, we're not going to do the, MVP and LVP and all of that offensive player award. We're going to do a couple of little, smaller awards, less well-known awards, but I think they're important.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's not the ones that's like, who's been the best so far? Who's this guy?
Right.
So it's just a few other things, and just to get you thinking about things in a few other ways, I suppose.
Absolutely. And hopefully maybe with trade deadlines coming up, this will, spark your interest in a guy that you think maybe you want to trade for, or maybe it's a guy you want to get rid of. So without further ado, Steve, we are going to hand out some hardware. We're going to start off with the most likely to single-handedly lose you a matchup award. So this award is supposed to go to an individual player who essentially could lose an entire week for you. As you mentioned this past week, who was it that lost your matchup for you? Marvin Jones.
Marvin Jones, that's right.
Now, I don't know that Marvin Jones is a great candidate for this award, although it's getting close to that.
Yes.
But this guy will, it's a guy that I think you depend on for points. In my mind, this is how I see the award. It's a guy you depend on for points, and yet he has the opportunity to throw up a dud and just completely derail your plans for the week. So I'll start with you, Steve. Who are you giving the most likely to single-handedly lose you a fantasy matchup award?
All right, this one is a little tough for me because this is a guy that's been near and dear to my heart, and it's going to be DeAndre Hopkins. And I've selected him here because when the season started, his draft value is a late first-round pick. He was projected as a top 5 fantasy wide receiver. And then heading into week 10, he is currently wide receiver 36 in half-point PPR scoring. He has scored less than 8 points in 4 of his 8 games played so far. He's only scored more than 15 points one time. So not only has he single-handedly lost you matches because you're expecting so much more out of your first-round pick, he hasn't really done anything to win you a matchup. He scored 20 points in week 2 against Kansas City, and that's about it. So he's not a guy that you've been able to rely on. But going forward, as I'm glad that you mentioned talking about trades, he is somebody that I would be looking to target, and I'd be trying to do it as soon as this week because his schedule for the rest of the season just looks absolutely money. He's got the Jaguars, the Raiders, Chargers, Packers, Colts, Jaguars again, and the Bengals. So the secondaries that he's going to be facing, not one of those really scare me. So although he has been so up and down, that might be able to work to your advantage to the point where you might be able to go and get him a little bit cheaper than he would have cost in seasons past.
Excellent choice for that award. I think you are right on the money as far as the type of player we're looking for here. But I'm going to go in a little bit similar direction, but a different player. Let me read to you some scores. Some fantasy point scores. Obviously, this is half point scoring. This is falafel scoring, and so here we go: 10.9, 6.1. 27.4, 13.7, 28.1, 6.4, 22.8, 2.5, and then 11.2. This particular player is all over the map. And furthermore, when I look at his, a little deeper at his statistics for the season, and I see, 1, 2, 3 games with a catch percentage either in the 30s or lower, I do not like those numbers, particularly when you're talking about a week 8 matchup where he had 6 targets and 1 catch for 20 yards. Not good. I think that, so my player is T.Y. Hilton. Obviously, yeah, you look at T.Y. Hilton and you think, big time scorer, has had a great year. You're looking at, what are we talking about? 129.1 points so far this season in falafel scoring. He's going, hasn't had his bye week, so he's going into the bye week this week. But he, averaging 14.3 fantasy points per game, and that should be so much higher based on his highs. But his lows are so bad. You just can't go through. You can't rely on a guy, in my opinion, that will put up 1 catch for 20 yards. You just can't, against a Kansas City defense who, admittedly is pretty decent, but not as good as you think. I mean, they're overall, where are we at here? Middle of the pack as far as the their percentage or their points per game for fantasy wide receivers. They're 7th. So 26. They're giving 26.1 fantasy points per game to wide receivers. So not even that great. I guess bottom third of the league. So, and 1 catch for 20 yards. This is a guy that just has a history of disappearing in particular games. And I think part of that is, his value is hurt even more by the fact that Dante Moncrief is back. And as we mentioned, very efficient. Has caught a touchdown pass just about every week. So, I just, Hilton's a guy that scares me. He's because of where he was drafted, because he's your number one, a lot of people's number one wide receiver, and because he's currently 6th in scoring for wide receivers, it just makes me very nervous because you're depending on him. And then, to your point, where you might be trading for your award winner, in my mind, for Hilton, he's a guy that I might actually look to trade if you can. Obviously, it hurts him a little bit on bye week, but I'm coming out of the bye week. His schedule isn't great. He has a great matchup in Week 13 against the Jets, but Week 14 he plays Houston. Week 15 he plays Minnesota, and Week 16 again another good matchup against Oakland if you get to the finals. But those Houston-Minnesota matchups in the first 2 weeks of the playoffs, I do not like at all.
Yeah, that is a great point. I think once he comes out of the bye, you try and upsell him as much as possible. And you try and move him because I especially going into the playoffs, I do not like having people that have a floor like that. I'm very much a high floor guy, and so having someone that can put up a 1 for 20, which I mean even DeAndre Hopkins against Tennessee, someone you're not really afraid of, he put up a 1 for 4, so that's even worse. That's terrible. And but against that same Kansas City defense, he had 7 for 113 and a touchdown. So. It's just, 2 different guys. One guy that's been doing great, and I think he's going to start falling down to regress towards the mean. And then DeAndre Hopkins, I don't think there's any way that he ends the season below a top 25 wide receiver.
Right. All right, so we'll move along to the next award. This would be the Most Valuable Bye Week Fill-In Guy Award. So what we're looking for here is pretty self-explanatory in the title, but it's a guy that he's not a starter on your roster, but he's a guy that you've probably shifted into, the bye week fill-in mode when some of your other starters are on their bye week. And so basically it's a consistent player that you think has the ability to have decent games when you need them the most. So I'm going to start off here, and it's the guy that I'm giving this award to is a guy that I have sadly mocked, I guess, on this program previously. He's a guy that I like. I don't love as an overall fantasy player, but when you look at it from this perspective, this is, I think, the reason. One of the good reasons to have him on your roster. So Jamison Crowder is the guy that I'm giving this award to, obviously the Washington wide receiver. And the reason I've always, mocked him per se, for lack of a better word, is in my mind, he's a touchdown dependent guy, and he's just another guy. I think I've said that before. I've used the Jag phrase before, but he's just another guy. He doesn't do anything special. He's not flashy. His numbers are, overall fairly consistent. Not a lot of highs, not a lot of lows. You're getting 8 to 10 points at most weeks. A little bit more if he scores, a little bit less if he doesn't. Only 1 week where he was under 8 points, which is against Cleveland, sadly, 3.1 points in week 4. And then if you look at the reason I'm giving him this award overall, if you look at the last 4 weeks before week 9, he was on bye week 9. So we're talking week 5, 6, 7, and 8. He scored at least 11 points. He had 11, 11.8, 14.3, and then 21.2. And those were prime bye weeks. Obviously 9, week 8 was a big week for by a lot of teams on bye weeks. He gets 21 points there. And then, he misses week 9, so he's part of the bye-pocalypse, week 2 of bye-pocalypse, I guess. But, it's just those 4 weeks were very consistent, and that's prime bye-week time. So you probably used him for a fill-in if he was on your roster. So I think he's a great, great guy for that. So that's who I'm giving this particular award to. And by the way, he's also only owned by 53.2% of people. So
he might be out there.
He might be out there if you are looking for him.
Yep. I definitely can't argue that. He has been very solid, and he's been one of those higher floor guys that you did have that 1 3-point game that you mentioned. But other than that, he's been a high floor guy. It's hard sticking somebody like that in your lineup over some of your bigger name guys, because it does seem to have more of a limited ceiling, a higher floor, but it seems like a lower ceiling. So for me, I am just going to talk about someone real quick, someone that I've already mentioned in the bye weeks in the waiver wire, and that is going to be wide receiver Rashard Matthews. Mm-hmm. Like I had mentioned, 5 touchdowns in the last 5 weeks, including 2 last week against San Diego. He played all 5 of these weeks. Obviously all these 5 weeks. Tennessee's bye week is not until week 13. So he was available during the bye-apocalypse that was going on. He only had 1 game that was under double-digit scoring, which was the game that he did not score a touchdown. So that is something that you do want to worry about if you're going to pick him up and use him for this last round of buys, is that his yardage. He doesn't have 1 game over 70 yards, but he also doesn't have 1 game under 3 catches. So he's getting a slight, not a great amount of volume, but he's getting enough catches and he's doing enough with them where he's making him productive. I don't think he's somebody that you want to continue using going forward, just somebody that was very serviceable, averaged over 10 points during the last 5 weeks, and somebody that you could have definitely plugged in and used. I know I ended up having to use him last week when he went off, so that was very beneficial to me. So that is who my bye week award is going to. And then I've got honorable mention here for one Lance Kendricks, tight end for the Los Angeles Rams. He had at least 5 catches and 50 yards or a touchdown in 4 of his last 5 games. If you were desperate through those bye weeks, like we mentioned, all the terrible tight ends that were, or all the tight ends that were off last week, he was tied for receptions for tight ends for the last 4 weeks. So he was definitely somebody who you could have picked up and plugged in, and he would have paid off for you as well.
There are probably people listening to this podcast that don't even know who Lance Kendricks is.
It's very unfortunate. I actually had him. I have him in one of my MFL 10s, oddly enough, and so every time
I'm
he
not
does
suggesting
anything, I get happy about that.
I'm not suggesting they shouldn't know who he is, but I mean, or they, yeah, I think they should know who he is. I'm just saying, I think he's such a, he's a guy that's flown under the radar. I think a lot of talent and never really lived up to his talent during his time in the NFL so far. But hopefully, he's starting to turn it around. Still, also only owned in 19.1% of leagues on ESPN. So, if you are looking for another, bye week fill-in for a tight end, he's a guy you can still have.
Absolutely.
All right, we continue on. Here's an award that's a little more mainstream, but I want to know who you think are you have for the most consistent performer in fantasy so far this season, Steve. And what we mean by consistency is obviously, the guys that sort of like we've been talking about. You want guys that have a basically for consistency, you'd love it if they have a high floor, high ceiling. But, at the very least, you don't need the high ceiling, but you're looking for the high floor. So who's very consistent where, you can count on at least, you're going to get 15 points from this guy every week, or you're going to get, whatever the range is, even if it's only 5 points, you at least know you're getting 5 points. So who do you have in this category, Steve?
Yeah, I'm kind of taking the easy way out on this one, and I've got a 3-way tie between David Johnson, Ezekiel Elliott, and DeMarco Murray. And the only reason I left Melvin Gordon off of this list because he does have one game in here with 9.4 points, and whereas these other guys have gone double digits every single game of the season. And I would put David Johnson at the top of that list. His worst performance so far this year was a 12.4 point game, and he's got 5 games of 20 points or more. He's got 2 games with over 30 points. So that guy, he's just been amazing. And he's the epitome of consistency. He's doing everything. And DeMarco Murray, I don't think anybody saw the season that he's had. He's only had below 15 points one time. So he might have even a more consistent floor than David Johnson does. So all 3 of those guys are guys that I don't have nearly enough stock in, wish I had more, and they're just killing it week in, week out.
Yeah, I agree with you. I had David Johnson on my list of one. I had one guy, and that was the guy because I don't think you can argue with the overall consistency there. That, like you mentioned, it's just unbelievable when your floor is 12 points. You're doing pretty well for yourself, and then when you look at the average of 21.8, it's just he's killing it, and so I completely agree with you there. I can't argue against Elliott either, or Murray for that matter. So I think we're in agreement there. One, we don't talk about defenses on this program very often, but I will say this: if you are looking for a consistent performer, as I mentioned, it could be just 5 points as long as you can count on it. And the Ravens defense, surprisingly, has been very consistent this season. I'm looking through the top 5 defenses in Falafel, and obviously everyone knows the Vikings and the Broncos are great defenses. The Vikings have struggled a little bit lately. The Eagles have been good, and the Cardinals have been good. So those are the top 5 defenses in Falafel, or 4, I should say. And the Ravens are 5th. But of those top 5, they're the only defense that doesn't have a negative or a 0 for the season. So just, like I said, I know we don't talk about defenses very often, and for good reason. But if you're looking for consistency, the Ravens are one that you may want to look to pick up if you can.
Yeah, if you score 15 points against the Steelers, I'm all in.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we move on then. Obviously, you must find, if you have a consistent performer, there must be the opposite, Steve, and you are not allowed to say your Falafel roster for this category.
That is unfortunate.
Yeah.
So looking elsewhere, luckily I don't know everyone. So Isaiah Crowell, he is going to be my least consistent player of the year so far. Currently RB10 in half PPR scoring, averaging 12.5 per games, but it is so up and down that is just a guy that you cannot trust week in and week out. For the last 6 weeks, his point totals go like this: 21.7, 4.5, 4.6, 15.4, 13.3, and 8.7. So, I see this trend continuing. I think it's going to go up and down for the rest of the season. So the next time that he has a game where he goes off, where he scores double digits, I'd be looking to offload him to somebody before the trade deadline and try to get somebody that might be a little more consistent, someone that you can trust going forward a little bit more, someone probably like maybe a Frank Gore, somebody that is just absolutely, week in and week out, gets into the end zone, because that seems like what that guy does every single week. So Isaiah Crowell, he's going to be my least consistent so far this year.
Definitely a good pick, and I will stay in the same category with running backs. I think that's probably a trend that most people have experienced throughout this fantasy season. And my guy would be Terrence West from the Baltimore Ravens. I think he, obviously started the season off slow with Forsett still in the fold. We thought, even though Kenneth Dixon was hurt, so the first 3 weeks you can kind of throw out. And then week 4, when he got the job, he takes over and he gets 21 carries, 113 yards, and a touchdown for 17.3 points. He's currently running back 27 in half-point PPR scoring, so he's definitely having a decent season. However, the ups and downs you can't live with when you're talking about, obviously, consistency. 17.3 points, then 9.9, 26.3 points, and then 1. And then he has the bye week, and then he comes back against Pittsburgh and has 3.2 points and barely, 15 carries for 21 yards. Not what you're looking for there. I do not see improvement, and it's another reason why I mentioned that, Kenneth Dixon is another guy that if he's available, he's a guy as a rookie you should start to see the carries go more his way, because Terrence West's just not getting it done anymore and very inconsistent. But having said that, he'll probably put up 20 points against Cleveland this weekend.
Yep, I definitely agree. I think Kenneth Dixon, although he has not done much this season, you did see him get an uptick in carries last week. I think that trend does continue. I think that Terrence West's time is slowly dwindling away, and his weeks of weekly production are probably done for this season.
All right, and it has been confirmed, Steve. We have the results. The results are in. The most likely to be named the starter and then not get a touch after the first quarter is Ryan Matthews. It's confirmed.
All right, that's good. I was on the edge of my seat for that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
So glad to hear that Ryan Matthews did win something.
It'll be
on this award show today.
It'll be the only thing, that and the efficiency award, he will win for the season. That about does it for us tonight, Steve. But we're still under an hour. Should we just have dead air?
No, I've got one final award to hand out here.
Oh,
and this is going to be the most likely to make you wish that you've gotten a bad meal from instead of owning this player. And I'm going to give that one to Blake Bortles this week or this season. He has had 2 20-point games in a row now. That gives him, I believe, 3 on the season. He has weaseled his way all the way up to QB 11 on the season, which means people are going to start trusting him again, and they're going to start putting him in their lineup, and he is going to absolutely make you regret it. Last year, he didn't have quite the amount of disappointing games that had lowered his value. He was definitely up in the top 5 or between 7 and 4 throughout the entire season, but started off a little bit slow. And I think that now that he's had these big games back to back, people are going to start throwing him in their lineup again. And I think it starts this week with the matchup against Houston. I think he's going to, regress back to what he normally is. And I think he's going to have a very rough week this weekend. So Blake Bortles also winning an award on the Falafel Awards this week.
That's pretty impressive. I couldn't agree with you more. I'm not sure who else could even come close to him in this award category.
Tough. He ran away with it.
It's going to be very close. Some candidates I could see maybe getting there, and don't kill me for this one, but
I'm gonna.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you're going to. Des Bryant is a guy that I could see potentially.
I won't kill you for that.
I mean, look, he's been not good. Has the one good game, 4 catches, 113 yards, and a touchdown. Obviously, he's been hurt. Has 2 games with over 100 yards, but He was so bad against such a choice matchup against Cleveland. I could see it going very badly for the rest of the season for him. I could also be very wrong and could turn around and he could be great, but he's just a candidate that I could see being in the running for this award. Another guy that I would think could be on this award is Michael Floyd.
Oh yeah,
definitely.
Oh yeah, that old ball of crap.
Yeah, big old ball of crap. A lot of talent, and yet just has never been able to do anything with it. And I'm sorry, Sal, because that probably hurts you.
I think Sal got over that one pretty quick.
I would imagine so.
Moved on to the next one.
Being in first place in falafel probably helps heal the pain.
Yeah, it probably eases a lot of wounds.
There's 15 spots difference between the two of you guys.
We like to make sure we have a lot of different viewpoints on this show. So we like to take people from all different parts of the standings.
All are accepted here, from first to worst.
That's right. I would like to say that I am only 5 points away, 2 games out, and 5 points off from being the lowest amount of points scored in the league. So you watch out, Pete Dolo. You watch out. I'm coming for you, buddy.
That's right. You can do it, Steve. We have faith in you. All right, that about wraps it up for tonight, this time for real. I apologize. There has been no music on this episode, so hopefully, Steve, you'll still be able to get to sleep tonight. And, next, maybe sometime in the near future, we can have Sal, sing you a song.
Don't worry. Sal calls me before bed every night. So
creepy. So let's just get to final thoughts.
All right, everybody. Thank you for not being creeped out and sticking around through this entire episode. If you'd like to find us on Twitter, you can do that at Falafel House. Search for us on Facebook, like the page there, Falafel House. Find all of our good fantasy football content that comes out each and every day. You can find that on falafelhouse.com. Sal, I would throw it to you, but you're still not here. So, Kev, what do you got?
He's really killing the flow of this show.
I know. It's really unfortunate.
Does that mean we depend on him? Because I would hate to think that.
I'm not going to answer that for your own sake.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. I just want to remind everyone that I do love to get reviews on iTunes, particularly when they mention me and not Sal. So if you could head over to iTunes and mention me in a positive review, that would be great. Other than that, thank you to everyone for sticking around, and definitely make sure you go check out the Fantasy Life app. Hopefully you enjoyed this shorter episode of Falafel House Fantasy Football Podcast. Again, you can check out all the fantasy goodness on falafelhouse.com, as Steve mentioned, and I would just like to say that we will be back on Friday. Is Sal going to be with us on Friday, Steve? Do you know? Do we know?
I don't want to give everyone hopes up and then have them be shattered when he is.
Yeah.
So we're gonna say no, probably not.
Probably not. And then Sunday he will be back. The episode will be released Monday, and I won't be there, so that'll be good for you, Steve. Hopefully you'll be able to enjoy that. And until that time, for now, Steve, hit the button.
Sal, kick Pinocchio.